You're in my head now.
Am I?
Yes, you are.
Oh, perfect. Okay. There's always something all the time. For
That's
me,
right.
anyways.
Yeah,
But I think that
exactly.
I'm in that mindset of thinking it and saying it, so maybe that's why every time I come on, I have
Yep.
an issue.
That could be. You set it
Uh,
up.
hmm
Perfect.
So I guess we should warn people. I did in caption that if
Yep.
they've been through any form of abuse before, to be wary of watching the video because it could trigger a lot of emotions for them on what they go through.
That's right.
Um,
I see lots of
so I
people
guess,
joining us.
yeah, there's a bunch of people joining us now. That's good. It's good now, Emma. That's great. Okay, so what we're going to share today is myself as a child going through an abusive home, um, growing up with it, and then, growing up with it, and then as a teenager, because of what I've been through, how I was in my first relationship, and then how I turned myself around from it. Um, and then Kimberly's going to share about, was it just your past relationship you were in?
The past two, I had a pattern.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
But you learned from it now, I'm
I've
hoping.
learned from it. Yes, I have.
So that's good. Yeah, no,
Yep.
that's awesome. So yeah, we want to help people send out a message to see warning signs of maybe what they're in now,
That's right.
or if they're stuck in a place because they just left one, what they can do, to better themselves to get out of either the depression state they might be in, or any state they might be in, really.
That's right.
So I'm sure you have a lot of good information on that, on how you've become so successful in your life, and you're an inspiration already to people on Facebook. And that's why I follow you, and that's why I added you, because I think, what was it? You were always on there promoting healthy living and healthy mindset.
That's right.
That was always your big thing.
Yep.
And yeah. So before my anxiety kicks in, because it is a pretty big topic. Let me see now. I guess for me, growing up as a child, there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of controlling behaviors, physical violence when I was really small that I don't remember, the verbal insults, and another big one was manipulation. It was always more towards my mother,
Okay.
but I still grew up with it. I still heard it, heard the put downs all the time that were actually jokes, right? They were supposed to be funny jokes, but really, they're put downs. Um, so yeah, for me as a child, I grew up with a lot of abuse like that. Um, you know, I've gotten to a place today, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I have gotten to a place today of forgiveness. Um, and I forgive, even my mother would say too, we forgive my father for what the past was, because to some extent we all make mistakes, might be just on different levels, and people change over time, um, and might not be the same person as what they were. For me, I'm 40, so a lot of this would have happened when, I was from the age of 1 right up until 19 when my mom left my dad. When she finally had the courage to leave him, because it was a long, long struggle. Um, so yeah, I mean, I grew up with the manipulation, putting down my mother all the time. Um, you know, you end up not feeling good about yourself, and my mom would always go to emotional eating. So she put on a lot of weight from emotional eating, and then just growing up in that, and then people always thinking my dad was such a good dad, and he was a good person outside of the house, because everything always happened inside of the house. You would never see it or notice the abuse from that person. I used to have a lot of friends that would work for my dad and be like, and they would always say, like, your dad is such a good guy. Why don't you like him? We work with him. He's amazing. He's such a great guy. And then in the meanwhile, I keep this stuff in and I don't bring it up to start telling people as a teenager even of the things that I'm going through at home, because it's normal. For me, it's normal, a normal way of living, because I've never seen anything else. So you could imagine now going through that as a child, and as a teenager, getting into my first relationship was extremely unhealthy. You know, I'm so ashamed of how I was in my first relationship. I was exactly like my father in my first relationship. A lot of manipulation. That was my biggest thing that I can think of or remember. You know, there's no worst one to really have. Between the verbal, the mental, and the physical abuse, they all affect someone, you know, in different ways that leave scars, no matter, you know, which one they are.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a rough 3 years of my first relationship, before I got to the point where I didn't want to be like my dad anymore. I put myself into therapy, and I stayed in therapy for about, I'd say, maybe 2 years, from 18 to 20. And by that time, it was too late with the relationship. She finally had the courage to leave me at that point. You know, and then again, my second relationship, even then I started getting hooked on drugs. I was hooked on drugs because my self-esteem was so low from growing up being abused at home and being bullied as a child, that every year I went to school I was being picked on and bullied.
Yep.
So the drugs came into play for me probably about 15, and yeah, it stuck with me until I went into treatment finally when I was 32.
Yeah.
So my second relationship was still abusive. It wasn't as bad as the first one, not nearly as bad, but it was manipulation on the fact of hiding myself doing drugs. A lot of putting blame on them and picking fights just so I could leave for the night and go out and hang out with my friends. So you purposely pick, as an abuser, you purposely pick fights just so that you can get what you want, so you can go do what you want. And then meanwhile, you know, they'd be left at home upset thinking it was them. Right, on why the fight started. Manipulation is huge on making the other person feel like it's them. And I think, like, a lot of the times people don't, you know, when you're in that, the other person feels like maybe it is them.
Yeah.
And that's why they maybe stick it out for so long, because you've convinced them that that it was them on, you know, why you picked the fight or whatnot. So, you know, like for me, I'm just trying to think now. When I did my treatment, though, when I went to treatment, I turned things around. It was more of a spiritual program that I did, and that's where I got to the point of learning to forgive my dad.
That's right.
And that was around 32, 33, because all of my life I had so much hate and so much anger that I couldn't get rid of. And if people were to tell me, like, oh, you know, if you forgive them, everything will be okay. To me, then, at that mindset, that was crock shit. There's no way that that's going to benefit me. But really, it just held me back. So, you know, when I learned, that's why I had a post not too long ago. It was one of those polls I did about believing if the person was abused, because for me, I was abused, and that's why I turned into, as a young teenager, an abuser.
Right.
So for me, I thought that, you know, maybe he was abused, and that's why he never got help, and it carried on to me.
What's that adage? Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, and if you don't get it fixed to stop the cycle,
that's right,
it's just going to keep repeating over and over and over.
Absolutely.
However, the person needs to want to change.
That's
and that
right.
was the thing for me, is that I hated my dad so much back then that it made me do the work to not be like him.
Exactly.
You know, because some people say, you know, if you're in a relationship and the person is saying, oh, I'll go to treatment, I'll get help, as a last resort, because you're threatening them to leave them, and they end up going, they don't really want to go.
It's just more manipulation.
To hang on longer, right? To hang on longer. So, I lost my train of thought. So yeah, anyways, I got to that place of being able to forgive my dad. And I can't tell you how huge that breaking point for me was when I was finally able to let it go and try to have an understanding that maybe he was abused as a child. And like myself, I've made a lot of mistakes in my past. And then I also put that on him, you know, that he's made a lot of mistakes. He's got a lot of learning and growing to do. And it just helped me ease off on the anger and letting go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I'm in an extremely healthy relationship.
That's
and
awesome.
Though, you know, yeah, it's amazing. The relationship I'm in is amazing. She's amazing. And I treat her, it's very mutual for being an amazing relationship. But
that's good.
So, yeah, so that's my part.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
I have the opposite end of that, where I was the victim of the abusive relationship. And, you know, a lot of abusive relationships are fueled with low self-esteem, like you mentioned, and the substance abuse just comes hand in hand. You know, everyone I've spoken to, and a lot of situations where I've helped people get out of the situation, they have lots of low self-esteem on both parties. And one or both parties has some sort of substance abuse going on. You know, I've rarely seen domestic violence in a situation that is healthy. You know, but the list that we were talking about earlier, you know, the patterns where you have the mood swings, the controlling behavior, the belittling, the verbal insults, you know, all of that you don't think of as red flags when you're first in a relationship. You just kind of, I get into people pleasing. So, you know, the little, oh, you're not going to wear that, are you? Well, that's digging at my self-esteem subconsciously, but you don't think anything of it. You think, oh, maybe it's not appropriate for where we're going. So you let these things go and you don't recognize them as being red flags, you know, and the belittling does turn into humiliation, you know, where you'll be out in public and they kind of, you know, take teasing to a whole new level, but you're with someone, so you joke around because you're uncomfortable standing up for yourself, but that's all just belittling and tearing you down bit by bit. And it progresses. It's never, you know, it's never like a light switch where all of a sudden you're being beaten in the back room. There's little things that just kind of break you down over time. And you know, you don't know, because usually you come from a past where you've not known what a healthy relationship is, like you said, and it just progresses from there. Picking out the faults, you know, and isolating. Isolation is probably the worst part of domestic violence, because it lets your abuser control you even longer. You know, people don't know what's going on behind closed doors, and that's just a form of enabling. Like, you know, I would hide and cover things up and make everything look picture perfect. But people knew something wasn't right, but never really, you know, said anything. But I thought I had this perfect facade that everything was wonderful, white picket fence. Meanwhile,
but they could see a change in you, probably.
Exactly. Like, I've withdrawn and, you know, not going out with your girlfriends because you're actually not allowed. You're not allowed to hang out with those people because, God forbid, you might say something and then they might clue in. And that's the alienation. Like, both family and friends get alienated. And it's just the controlling and what else did we have? Placement of blame. Oh gosh, I was wrong for everything. And it got to the point where I would actually accept fault just to keep the peace. So I would be accused of something and I knew what was coming if I defended myself. So I would just accept the insults and the blame and say, yeah, it's all my fault, just to keep the peace, hanging on to every bit of the relationship. And where I got the courage to leave is when I saw my son starting to mimic the behavior of his dad. So my son would start picking on me and belittling me with his dad, and then they would joke about it. And I was like, so that's kind of the catalyst for me. When I started seeing that, I was like, this isn't right. Like, my son is joining in on this, and they're both belittling me together. And you know, it got more and more violent, where I would have situations where I wouldn't be getting hit. So I was like, no, he's not physical. But it was so close, you know, to being that borderline. And it just progressed, you know, as things transpired, until the point where, you know, I could almost predict the cycle. with his moods.
Mm-hmm.
It got very repetitive, where I could see, you know, especially with substance abuse, you can kind of see their moods coming and going. And so I'd be like, oh, I know what's coming next. This is the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
And, you know, the kids would sleep with me at night because he would come in and wake me up in some sort of psychosis and rage. And so the kids would sleep with me hoping that he wouldn't do that night, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, a lot of it is keeping you isolated. The more isolated you are, the more control they have over you. So like the number one thing I tell people, like if you want to leave an abusive relationship, have a support system, maintain friendships, tell people what's going on, because that support system's what's going to save you. Bringing it into the light is what I say. You know, the more it's in the light and the more you share it, because these are things that are dark and you want to hide them, and then it manifests. But if you're exposing it and bringing it to the light, then you're more likely to get help to get out of the situation. And I mean, once I got honest with people, the support I got was incredible. You know, people understand, like I said in my post, you know, the other day, actually, we were helping a lady, and the guys that came to help us move, they were like, my mom had to do this when I was a teenager, so I'm so happy to help move this lady to get her to a safer place. You know, people get it, and the more we talk about it, the less people are going to be shameful of it. You know, because there's so many people living in terrible situations. You know, having an escape plan. If you have an escape plan, there's a problem. You know, if you have a bag packed or a plan of where you would go, that means that there's something bad going on in your life. And you should really pay attention to that, because that's not healthy. That's not normal. What else did I do? Knowing you're not at fault. That's so important when you're having a support system. Know you're not at fault. Like all these things that you're taking blame for, you know, you have a right to be happy and accepted and loved, and you don't have to accept anything less. You know, and I'm working with women that they think they have to settle because no one else will love them, because they've been abused. And, you know, there's 7.4 billion people on the earth. Half of them are the opposite sex. So odds are pretty good you're going to find somebody, you know, like, but if you're so caught up with the wrong person, you're never going to find the right person, you know? So I'm happy you've gotten a new relationship, but for me, you know, I'm single, and I am, you know, testing the dating pool here and there, and but I'm not gonna settle for anything less than I deserve anymore, because there is so many people out there, and hopefully the person for me is out there working on themselves like I've worked on myself. I know you went to treatment and got into a spiritual program. I just went straight to AA, and I share that openly with a lot of people, because I think that that's, you know, it's a really great place to go if you do have a problem. You don't have to go to treatment in every instance. And it is spiritually based. And finding a God is gave me that unconditional love that I didn't have for myself. And finding a tribe of women who loved on me when I didn't love myself, it brought me to a place of loving myself, you know, and I don't have to seek that outside validation from anywhere else in order to feel loved. It's like, I have a God who loves me. I have female friends who love me. I have a cat, a dog, and kids who adore me. And now I love myself enough that, you know, I'm open to loving someone else and having them love me in a healthy way. And, you know, painting red flags green is something that I was an expert painter, you know, and now I know that, you know, red flags are red for a reason. And if something doesn't seem right, it's usually not right. And it's a good thing to pay attention to it. And I loved when you were talking about forgiveness. I have forgiven tattooed on me. Forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's for yourself. And you can forgive someone. You don't have to forget. You know, you know, you forgive and you never forget, and you learn the lesson.
The scar is there. You have the scar.
That's right.
It will always be there.
And I've found the way to heal those scars and to heal your wound is to share it with people, because the more we bring the darkness to the light, the more people don't live in darkness. And I absolutely, you know, have found so much healing myself by sharing. And sometimes I don't want to share, and I'll be like, oh,
Myself too. I know.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, I really don't want to share. I feel like it makes me feel less. And there's that low self-esteem kicking in again, right? Not feeling worthy or not thinking that, and I'm like, no, you know what?
Or people judging you, or afraid of being judged. That's a big one for me to get
right.
over.
Yeah, the rejection, the judging, the worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I think of how I was back then and how a person like me would have impacted myself. If someone would have been there for me, like I am able to be there for other women, maybe I would have left sooner, and I research a lot. I love to read. And, there's always things on the internet that you can look up about, like, especially narcissistic abuse, because that's usually where the domestic violence comes from, is, and just knowing the character traits so that you can see them. I mean, get knowledgeable, and then you can prevent a whole lot of cycles from continuing on and on.
Yeah.
And it is possible to break the cycle. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just when you don't know how to do it.
Well, exactly. And that's why it's like, bring it to the light, share with people what's going, because, lots of time people are going through it and then you had no idea that they were going through it, and I have people that will message me on Facebook and say, oh my gosh, I saw your post and I'm going through that. And it's somebody I never even knew was struggling. And so it's just so therapeutic for everybody, to talk, and people are social beings. We're meant to talk and share, and we don't do it enough. We don't share our feelings enough. And that's why a lot of us are struggling.
So you said you went from one abusive relationship and then you jumped it right into another one.
Absolutely.
So what did you not learn, or like for someone else finally leaving one and then to jump right back into another one? Like,
well, I thought that, because we all have a dating type. So I thought if I had an abusive person that was using drugs and alcohol, maybe the solution would be to find the same kind of person who didn't use drugs and alcohol, because maybe the drugs and alcohol was the problem and not the personality. And that turned out to not be the case. It was just, personality. And it was mostly to do with me. I hadn't done any work on myself. I was still looking for outside validation and still looking for a hole in myself to be filled. A guy's going to make me happy. Losing weight's going to make me happy. Getting a better job or a nicer car is going to make me happy. But I needed to be happy with myself first in order to attract the right thing. And so when I got healthy, healthier things came to me.
Yeah, and that's one thing I don't like hearing is I need someone to complete me.
Yeah.
I found someone, they complete me. You should, if you can, be completed before you met someone where you can complement each other.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Join each other and complement each other.
It should be complementary, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the movies sell us short. Like, I think we should have a class action lawsuit against Disney and all those, fairy tale ideas that they put that like women need a man to make them happy and successful. And, even there is a movie with, what's his name? Jerry Maguire. And the main line in the movie is, "You complete me."
Oh, yeah.
With Renee Zellweger.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just, you have to be happy and with yourself and love yourself before someone else can love you, or you're always going to be settling for less than you can deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of things did you can just leave her. She's fine. So what kind of things did you do? I mean, when you left the relationship, you must have, I'm assuming, in a depressive state.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Maybe scared for your life as well.
Absolutely.
A lot of threats at the end, a lot of scare tactics to try to hold you. They don't want to lose you.
A lot more manipulation comes out, and it turns into emotional manipulation, because they know like what your little weaknesses is. Financial manipulation, especially for women, because we're usually the lower income earner. So giving up the idea of leaving the house and, the money struggles, it's manipulation through money. And you kind of gotta get angry and get fierce and really just have that desire. And it's almost like a hunger to succeed. And knowing that you can, and hearing other success stories, I think is really important. I mean,
Yeah.
I read a lot. I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of people. But a big change for me was getting healthy, you know,
Yeah.
and building my self-esteem. And I mean, it's still, some days I still don't feel worthy and I still feel like I have nothing to contribute. But, you know, people keep telling me to keep going, so I keep
Yeah.
going. But
Yeah.
it's something we all struggle with, and I don't know why we don't talk about that more. Like, we all feel insecure and we all struggle with self-esteem, and it's there. I don't know anyone who just thinks they're all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? How did you rebuild your self-esteem then after leaving? Like, what kind of things? For someone to leave and being scared to leave, and then you're left a mess after you
Yeah.
finally get the courage to leave. Like, what kind of things do you recall doing for yourself to
Well,
start rebuilding?
you know, the doctors put you on antidepressants and pills, and they help in a short time, but you do not want to be on antidepressants and pills for your entire life and be chemically dependent. So getting healthy with me and getting clean inside, like my body, getting rid of drugs and alcohol, cleaning up my diet. So I'm whole food based, and my body
Yeah.
healed itself. My brain function increased as a result. But honestly, finding God and having a spiritual connection, you know, some people cringe at that. It is amazing. Having a power greater than yourself that's got your back. It could be anything, you know, there's all sorts of different gods that people worship, or the universe people.
Yeah.
You know, if you have some sort of spirituality in your life, then you know you're not alone, even when you think you're alone.
Yeah.
I used to not feel comfortable sitting on my couch by myself on a Friday night. Like, I would go to the casino just to have people around me, or I would have the TV on all the time because I was not comfortable being alone. And now I have that peace where I can sit on my couch and read with a cup of tea, and it's just like the
Yeah.
ability to just be still, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. And it's a gift, really. And a
Yeah.
lot of people don't have that. They need that constant noise or chaos in their life. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Ah, I was trying to think if there's something else. I always try to think, like, should I write it down? I need to write it down, and I forget to write it down.
I always take notes.
Oh, yeah. I actually have a little whiteboard
Yeah.
that's attached to my phone
Yeah,
here.
I got one back there.
So I guess we can talk about quickly 10 red flags that you could be in an abusive relationship. And the first one was humiliation. You know, like I said earlier, the jokes, thinking things are funny, putting you down in front of other people
Yep. Yep.
was one. Did you have one for yourself?
Well,
Those
I,
ones
I really liked, which one was it that we had here? The alienating of friends. Like, that one is a huge red flag. If all of a sudden you're in a relationship and all of your friends are no longer around, pretty good odds that you are kind of going down the path towards a domestic violence type relationship, or a controlling relationship, which will turn
Yeah.
into.
They don't normally go visit your family or your mom or your dad, and slowly it's like they
Yeah.
put guilt trips on you to make
Yeah.
you feel, you know, like, oh, what, you don't love me, you don't want to be with me, like
Yeah.
I had the day planned, and you know, slowly it continues to
Yeah.
snowball.
And what I've learned is a healthy relationship, you both should have your own lives separately
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
life together. You know,
Yeah.
girls' night out, guys' night out, you know, guys go watch the sports, girls go for a spa day, sorry. And then you have your couple things together. But I mean, for us, we did couple things, like different couples,
Yeah.
we would always be together, but then it gravitated where it was always his friends, and I lost my identity, and it was, you know, I was so and so's wife and so's mom, and that was it. And
You
so
lost your life. You lost your life.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, if I wanted to go out with my friends, it would be questions, or why are you wearing that? Or you have too much makeup on, or, you know what I mean? And it was like, you think the jealousy is a compliment because they love you, but it's actually controlling behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second one was verbal insults. If you're
Verbal.
verbally insulted.
Yeah. Lots of, you know, that's the little put
Same.
downs. Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the verbal. It doesn't have to be swearing. Well, he doesn't say "fuck this" or whatever,
Yeah.
calling me, putting me down. It's not. It doesn't have to be swearing.
No.
It's like the same thing we just talked about with the humiliation, even the verbal
Yeah.
assaults of just putting you down, taking away your self-worth.
Yeah. And
killing it.
it's little things where you kind of brush it off, but they add up and they snowball into something bigger, you know, and especially like after I had kids, it was about the weight. And it's like, you know, that's a soft spot for women. And if you get started poking at your weight, you know, that cuts you down bit by bit by bit.
You'll never find anyone else to love you.
Yeah.
You know, you start hearing all that stuff.
Yeah.
You're lucky that you have me, and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
That's all it is. That I know.
Yeah.
What was the other one? Physical violence. Okay, that one's an obvious one.
Obvious. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, some guys are so good at this, like, and it, you know, hindsight, you learn, and it's like, you know, I would get, you know, hit from the neck down so no one ever would see it. It was never like I had a black eye. It was, you know, the pushing against the wall or the holding your hand tight in public to make you be quiet, or, you know, there's little things that are the physical violence that, you know, you're not going to think of. It's not just getting punched in the face, you know, it's, controlling
controlling
behavior. Yeah.
I'm losing track. Unpredictable mood swings.
Yeah, those ones are even more prominent with drug and alcohol abuse. The mood swings, like, and that was from my situation. Is the mood swings with the drug and alcohol? You could almost like script them. It was pretty much on cue. There was a pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was the same way when I'd stopped using, or my weekends of going out and partying.
Yeah.
I was very agitated, big time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It was a big one for me.
Yeah. My ex would party all night, and then in the morning he'd have to go to work, and he would actually dump the hot coffee on the bed so that I couldn't sleep. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You don't get to go back to bed because I have to go to work. Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah. But you know, but you accept it, like craziness, just craziness.
Getting the cold water poured on your face to wake you up in the morning.
Yeah.
I had that. But that was for going to school because I couldn't wake up to go to school.
Oh my gosh.
Picking out your faults. We said that one. And we said alienating your friends and family.
Yep.
Placement of blame.
Yeah, always. Yeah, everything's always your fault. No matter what it is, even when you're not at fault, it's going to be your fault. And it gets to a point where you just accept it and you go, oh yeah, and then you believe it. Like, oh, maybe I am a total complete idiot. Maybe I am doing everything wrong. And you know, and that's a really scary place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Manipulation, we talked about that one.
Yeah.
A lot of manipulation. And calculated outbursts was the last one.
Yeah. I didn't really experience many calculated outbursts. They were more just outbursts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, more rage.
I remember when I was reading that one, it was out in public, they're fine, right? Everything is normal, everything is fine.
Yeah.
But as soon as you got home behind those doors.
Oh, you knew you were going to be in trouble. Yeah.
All hell went loose.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep.
Right.
I got that one. Check.
Yeah. So those are the 10 that I found that were popular for if you're in an abusive relationship. So people are aware if you're in them. And I don't mean to target just men, because I know women as well who are
That's
abusive.
Right. That's
it's
right.
Not just a man.
It goes both ways. There are women who abuse men as well. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So.
And I already talked about it. Awesome.
Yeah. Perfect.
Great. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
I've been wanting to do this for about 2 months now, but I was in my own little thing for 2 months and I wasn't ready to hop back on live yet. So.
Yep, and I'm always busy, so we didn't connect a few times.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye. Yep. See you guys later.